All right. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the uPOW podcast, your source of motivation, inspiration, and information on your pursuit of wellness. I'm Shawn.
And I'm Austin.
And tonight we have a very special guest for you guys. One of my coworkers. Her name is Bailey Jones, soon to be Bailey Yanakakos, because Chase finally put a ring on it. Bailey is a registered dietitian, a certified specialist in sports dietetics, and is the assistant director of performance nutrition for Indiana University Athletics. Well, Bailey, thank you for agreeing to do this. I know we've been talking about doing this forever, so I'm excited to finally sit down and kind of chat and everything. This is Austin, wherever his picture is in your video. Austin Lee is a good buddy of mine. We went to undergrad together. We went to grad school together. We didn't actually do grad school together. He did Kelly and I did SPH, and now I'm doing Kelly and he's doing life. So Austin is the other half of uPOW. And I think, honestly, he's probably got more questions about nutrition and whatnot than I do. So I'll probably let Austin handle most of it. And then I'll just kind of insert witty remarks and try not to go down too many biochem rabbit holes. That's cool.
That's perfect. I guess, like, first things first, if you just want to kind of like kick us off on, like, you know, your background, how you got into the field, and maybe what are some of your ambitions and dreams going forward.
Sure, absolutely. Well, like Shawn said, my name is Bailey Jones, and right now I'm a full-time sports dietitian at Indiana University. So at IU, I'm basically coordinating the nutrition care for 12 of our athletic programs. So we're not a large department, but we are definitely a passionate one. And I actually love working with the teams that I work with. Primarily, I'm assisting with all of our running teams, our wrestling team, baseball, men's soccer, women's soccer, kind of the whole gamut, if you will. And it's very much home. I really like it. And prior to IU, I actually originally got my start in baseball. So right out of school, I was working with the South Bend Cubs up in South Bend, Indiana.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, it was definitely very cool. And while I liked the pros, I found out kind of quickly that I enjoy working with more than one sport. So I think that's ultimately why the collegiate.
That's a big increase.
Yeah, a little diversity, which is good, I'm sure, because then you're not just working with like one type of athlete too. And I'm sure the diets and, you know, nutrition varies from, you know, each type of athlete too.
It really does. Yeah. And after 140 games with one team, I feel like you are ready to explore another sport at that point in time. So
that's fair.
So yeah.
So now you're here, Indiana. That's awesome. So I guess, like, you know,
real quick before we get going, Austin, I just want to say, for anybody listening, like, Bailey glossed over two very important things. Number one, Homegirl is the assistant director of sports performance nutrition. Like, let's not let that go by. And number two, with 12 teams, she has 350 athletes that she oversees. Okay. Like, we're not talking about like 12 teams. Like, we got like a few guys, like 300, like I barely could like keep up with doing diets on Trey and Little Matt and you, like, let alone like 300. Dude, I couldn't do it. I could not do it.
So how do you keep those people like accountable? And like, do people follow the schedules that you give? Because I'm sure that's like hard enough, you know, let alone like giving a person like their right plan.
Mm-hmm. No, that's such a good question. And it really varies, in my opinion, just on the athlete themselves and kind of their level of motivation. Because I'll get some athletes that I see multiple times a semester. And I mean, those are the kids I love to work with the most, because you can tell that they're motivated. They're constantly wanting to update their goals. And those are the ones that obviously see the progress the fastest as well. So that's always super rewarding. Some kids are really there more just for like a one-time check-in, which, don't get me wrong, is still helpful. But yeah, with 350 athletes, I definitely rely on them to come and find me occasionally, just so we can make sure that we are getting the necessary follow-up.
Okay, gotcha. And what does that like follow-up look like? Is it just like a plan that you give them, or is it just checking in with their current diet or whatever they're doing, just to make sure they're on the right track and to give them guidance from there? Or is it like a whole, like, hey, here's what you're doing, this is what you need to do, and kind of no questions asked, just do it?
Definitely, probably more along the first lines. I mean, in my own practice, I always like to start things off with just an initial consultation and then a body composition assessment.
Okay.
And the body composition assessment, I think that's a great starting point because, we can have all the conversations we want, but like, that's where we get some real objective data. So I can not only know their weight, but like, what's their body fat percentage? What's their muscle mass? How many calories are we predicting that they need? So when we can get that right from the beginning, it helps really direct our conversation in that consultation. And so then from there, we're gathering, there's just so much that can be individualized at this level. Things like food preferences, food budgets, practice schedules. So I want to make sure before I give any recommendations, I actually have a realistic idea of what their day looks like.
Well, that's that's so true too, because like eating healthy can be very expensive compared to the opposite, where you're picking up, ding dongs and Twinkies, and it's like you can feed a family off $4. But going to the grocery store, like I went to the grocery store yesterday and got all healthy food. It was $100. And like, I know being in a smaller town, that's still like pretty expensive just for like the week. But that's something that like people don't really think about either. And that's super important. So kind of like you grab like the budget, you grab like the schedule, you grab like the preferences, and then you get the data from there to then create their plan.
Mostly. A couple other factors that I always want to check in, like definitely their medical history. That's a part that can't be overlooked. And so if they have a big history of certain injuries or maybe some random medical condition that's a little bit abnormal, like that can get factored into nutrition. But yes, from there, then we can start putting together goals. We can start formulating meal plans. And really, I'm trying to read the athlete, like which is going to be most helpful to them. Like some people love those step-by-step plans. Other people take one look and get intimidated and they never see me again.
That's so true. Yeah. Cause if somebody was going to give me like, hey, this is your meal today, tomorrow, and the next day, I don't know if I could do that. But to give me like general advice, like, hey, here are the healthy foods that you should gravitate towards, and here are the ones that you should stay away from. I think that's more of like the plan that I could fit in, because then it's like, oh, what do I want to cook today? What do I want to make? How do I want to spice this up? But I guess like that's actually something that I'm very interested in, is like the food intolerances. Because for me, actually, I went to the ER on Wednesday because I had like pulled my oblique muscle, and my gut, whatever I was eating, was starting to push on my oblique, and it felt like it was pain for my appendix. So I went to the ER because I thought it might be like appendicitis for some reason. But like, how can you start to like diagnose what foods you shouldn't eat? Like if you have a gluten intolerance or a dairy intolerance, because I see all these panels that you can do. I hear about like GI specialists. Like, are they helpful at all? Or is it just kind of like a crapshoot where you got to figure out like an elimination diet and kind of go from there?
Excellent question. And it's interesting because this is really, in my opinion, like very much an emerging area of nutrition and dietetics. Like allergies have always existed, intolerances have always existed, but I feel like we are seeing them at such a higher rate now. And then on top of that, you have businesses that are trying to really turn a profit off that. So you can find a food sensitivity kit, with the snap of your fingers.
Yeah.
The unfortunate part is a lot of those are not super reliable. So I'm kind of curious, like, have you ever taken one of those at-home kits, and what was your experience like?
So actually, I just ordered one, and we are going to test it and then do a GI specialist. So I was hoping that you could give us a little guidance on like who we should see, or, maybe what our next steps are to see if because I guess that's why I want to compare, because I've always had problems with gluten and recently dairy. But I still feel like there's something else that when I eat it, it causes some, constipation, some bloating, just fatigue, brain fog. And I would love to just have like a proper, a diet that fits me. And I think that is such a good point too, that you brought up, like having diets are these like plans are more individual in nature, rather than these cookie cutter plans where you're going to hop on, keto, or you're going to hop on this like straight veggie diet or the pixie stick diet. I'm just making stuff up now, but
I'm sure it exists.
Yeah, I may or may not have done that
It
before.
did there for a little bit.
Oh boy. So I take it we just need to chat after this.
Yeah, exactly. I will not say it worked. I felt completely drained. I would not recommend it to anybody.
bro.
I was shredded though. That was true. But yeah, I guess that's I think maybe we'll have to meet back up and chat after we get the results and talk to a GI specialist too.
Yeah.
And see what your thoughts are.
Well, and I would love to see what those results are because, I mean, granted, I'm not a dietitian who specializes in GI health or gut health, but you know, what I do know from like the clients that I have had is that first and foremost, like when somebody's having a bad experience with food, we do want to rule out whether it's an allergy or whether it's an intolerance, right? Because an allergy is actually an immune response. Like your body's taking that food particle and it's as a foreign invader. And so it's going to trigger that immune response. And so you might get your GI symptoms like your nausea, diarrhea, cramping, bloating, et cetera. But you know, you might also have some of the more symptoms that are mimicking anaphylaxis. So like you might have the swelling, you might have the rash, you might have the hives. And that's indicating like something a little bit more serious that you're probably not going to want to, you know, occasionally consume, you're going to want to really avoid. Whereas the intolerance, it's definitely not comfortable, but it's likely not going to be deadly in any way, like an allergy could be. So I always find it's good to make the distinction. But unfortunately, the treatment is kind of the same, and that's basically avoiding whatever food it is. So that's kind of where those elimination diets come in, and they're not always fun, but at least they help get rid of the symptoms, and that's a win for most people.
Well, it's kind of interesting too. Like nightshade plants are something that I guess is popular that people are intolerant to as well. And it's like, I didn't even know that's a thing. Like, there's a whole list of.
What are you doing in your free time?
I don't know.
I'm gonna say that I'm not saying it's not true, but I haven't come across it. So
yeah,
I'll still look into that one.
I had a friend that like would have rashes when they would eat nightshade plants. And it was just the weirdest thing. And they, for the longest time, they couldn't figure it out. They thought it was gluten. They thought it was dairy. They did elimination diets, but like their last idea was veggies. You know, like why would veggies cause some problems with me? So I thought that was just very interesting to see, you know, it's not like your cookie cutter typical thing. And kind of going back to your point, where you're talking about, we're starting to see more allergies and food intolerances. I almost start to wonder if it's this mass production that businesses are starting to do, and you know, to make, you know, the yeast and dough rise faster, or different things to start to streamline that food process and keep those prices low, ultimately impact the consumer. So it's important more than ever to really have that like clean and healthy diet. And also to know your body as well, because it's not fun to have the bloating and the brain fog and feeling like a zombie. And I'm sure Shawn has experienced me on that several times, being very angry towards him.
Together, brother. It's all a wash.
Yeah, that's true.
I think that's a good segue too to like actually something. I think Bailey, you and I were talking about this the other day, like not only like the category of like who needs what, but like understanding that like if you're gonna go into like if you're a Joe Schmo, you're gonna have different needs than an athlete, right? And like athletes will have, even as they develop, different needs too. So like in cardiovascular physiology, we talk about the athlete heart, right? And how like more power athletes will develop their left ventricle, you know, endurance athletes will develop a different way. Like, is there an adaptation with different types of athletes, I guess? Like, so like, you know, if you're a weekend warrior and you go run kind of a couple times a week, yeah, it's probably not for you. But I'm talking about the guys that are training for the Boston Marathon. I'm talking about the guys who are power lifters or competitive bodybuilders, you know, because, you know, speaking anecdotally, like, I mean, I've had between 1 and 9 scoops of whey protein every day of my life for about 12 years. And now I can't even look at cheese or milk or anything. I'm just like, can't do it, you know? So.
Yep. Yeah, no, you bring up a good point. And I mean, are you speaking like only for the allergies or just in general, like that nutrient need difference between maybe your recreational athlete and your elite athlete.
I guess just more in general, like obviously there's a difference between someone who's a quote unquote athlete and someone who's just kind of like your everyday average person. But like even more so, like whenever you become an athlete and then you become, dare I say, an elite athlete or a little deeper down the road into being an athlete, there are certain things that change, like vitamin D3 metabolism and, the ability to break down certain proteins, maybe if you eat chicken every day of your life for 15 years. I mean, I guess what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. I mean, my thoughts are definitely that when you are in that athlete/elite athlete category, your nutrient needs are going to be different than your average person. And the first most obvious one that comes to mind is like simply your calorie need is going to be so different, right? If you're practicing for 2 hours, you might be burning anywhere from 500 all the way up to 1,000 extra calories than just your average Joe Schmo. And so in order to actually have an effective training session, you're going to need more calories, therefore more macronutrients. But then on the micronutrient side too, and there's some area for debate here. I'm not sure it's entirely well studied, but athletes typically do have a little bit higher recommendations for certain micronutrients. For example, they might have a higher level or a higher need for vitamin D. They might need more calcium in their diet to help support bone health. And I wish, especially in the collegiate professional setting, we did a little bit more lab testing, because I think that would indicate to us where exactly those deficits are or what gaps need to be filled. I actually see that as being like a very prominent area of focus in the next couple of years, because we know that those deficiencies or those deficits exist. We don't always know to what level. And unfortunately, sometimes I think we only find out after something bad happens.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Like,
We're more reactive.
How do you
proactive
measure that? Yeah, because like I feel like even like a normal person too, to diagnose that, it's typically they're in some sort of pain or can't function properly, and then it's like, okay, you have an iron deficiency, or you're not getting enough vitamin D, so you're depressed. It's like, how can we start to get ahead of that micronutrient area too?
Yeah. I mean, I know on our end, and granted, each university or organization will be different, but we actually started implementing some new policies as far as like lab testing goes for all of our incoming freshmen and transfers. And that was a big leap, because it's definitely a financial investment. But what we found is that nearly 50% of all the kids we screened, even just for low ferritin and low vitamin D, over half of them came back as deficient.
Wow.
And it's like, what
That's
if they
nuts.
had not tested that? They would have just gone undiagnosed until they got tired or had a stress fracture. So
that's crazy.
Oh, yeah,
50%.
50, that's
Yeah.
nuts.
And low vitamin D.
Yep. Our new incoming wave of soccer players, it was actually 80%.
Wow. So how does that impact you? Like if you're low on both of those?
Sure. So especially for the female athlete, I mean, if you have low iron or low ferritin, usually the first side effect you're going to feel is fatigue. And that one is hard because there are a lot of things that cause fatigue. You can have a long day and you're going to be tired. You can have a hard training session, you're going to be tired. But what's distinctly different about having low iron is that you're going to notice you're actually starting your practices or your training sessions feeling pretty defeated, already feeling drained. And those are times when you should be feeling ready to go and you should be feeling energized. So that's typically the biggest thing that they will experience. Vitamin D, unfortunately, is so much more subtle. Most people don't know that they have a vitamin D deficiency.
Okay,
Typically,
wow.
it really only emerges unless you are, if you're actually like testing for it. But
Okay.
what we'll find is that you may have low energy, bone health may be compromised, muscle health may be compromised. You might constantly be getting sick. I mean, there's so many uses for vitamin D in the body. It's unreal.
Sounds like me. So how could somebody like me, because I've actually been sick the last 4 months, like for 1 week out of each of the 4 months. And one was COVID, but like something like this where I get a sinus infection. How can somebody, is it like a lab test that I do, or how can I test for those micronutrients to see what levels they're at?
Yeah, so they're all blood tests at this point.
Okay.
And if you were somebody who was suspecting maybe a vitamin D deficiency, basically what you would need to look for are just like the commonalities that you would typically find. So for example, are you not getting a lot of sunlight? Like, let's be real, most of us in Indiana right now haven't seen the sun in a couple of weeks. So we're probably not synthesizing a lot of natural vitamin D from there. Do you eat foods that are rich in vitamin D, fortified dairy products, fish, eggs, any of those?
I'd say eggs, yes. In terms of dairy, no. I typically stay away from dairy
No boy.
because it just, does not agree with my body.
Okay, so that would be another box we would check, basically.
So I'm 2 for 2 right now.
You're 2 for 2. And then
I do
the last
take
one would
vitamin D supplements though. Does that help?
say that one more time.
I do take the vitamin D supplements though.
Oh, then yes, that would help. That would help a lot, actually.
A little bit. All right. What was the third one?
I guess what's the dosage for a vitamin D? I don't know, was it 5,000 IUs? I mean, I think I can't think of who wrote the study, but there was a study I saw that it was like different dosing patterns of vitamin D3, and it was like taking like up to like 25,000 IUs once a week versus like 5 or 10,000 a day. Like, I mean, is it just kind of like a wide range and you use what you use, or should everybody take too much and just pee out the rest? What do you think?
Everybody's got yellow pee.
I don't know if you've met me, but I'm one of those like, I'll be fine. Take another one, you know? Like,
Yeah.
So Shawn, you have stories. Supplements is like completely up your alley. So we should do another like co-segment on that where we just talk supplements.
Probably. Yeah.
Oh, that would be good. We should do a little panel and just have like a bunch of people like me, and then rapid fire questions for you too.
We could. Shawn will tell you everything that you should definitely never do.
Right.
I'll tell you what you should do.
It really gives you the proper recommendations. I'm like, dude, this time.
That's too funny.
But if you want to jump a little bit higher, just.
That's too funny.
Yeah. I already forgot your original question.
I was saying, what do you think about, like, I guess the dosages and the dosing patterns of vitamin D3? Because the research seems to have quite a bit of discrepancy in it.
Yeah, and there is. That's where the beauty of like nutrition is a science, but it's like it is most definitely an art as well. But no, when it comes to vitamin D, like generally a maintenance dose is right around 1,000 IUs a day. And that's really just to prevent, it's not quite as high as the numbers you were just saying. But if you are deficient, then you can really supplement anywhere from 2,000 to 5,000 IUs until that's corrected. And if it is like incredibly low, like below 15, really ideal levels are a lot closer to 40. But if it's below that 15 mark, some doctors will prescribe like a bolus all the way up to 50,000 IUs. So they will make sure it's corrected sooner versus later.
So why do I see all these supplements, have like the 5,000 to 10,000 to 20,000? Like if I go on Amazon and search vitamin D supplements, like I'm going to typically find the 10,000.
Yeah.
And not anywhere close to that 2,000 or 5,000.
Mm-hmm.
Is that just consumerism or
likely more is always better, right?
Yeah, true. Bigger the better.
No, and the only concern though is like vitamin D is fat soluble. So, I mean, unlike some of your other vitamins, you're not going to pee out the extra. And granted, toxicity would be hard to reach, but if you're taking a lot of supplements, you could definitely get there and sooner than one may expect. So unless like a deficiency is documented, we're usually recommending just that 1,000 to 2,000 IUs.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, interesting. So kind of, I kind of want to go back to that, like intolerance and allergies. Like, what would you recommend to diagnose, and to dig a little bit deeper for yourself?
Sure. So if one of the allergies or intolerances is suspected, then typically it's going to be the skin prick test or a blood test that gives you the most accurate results. And that's something that your doctor or like a certified allergist, they should be able to do for you in their offices. A GI doctor may or may not be the one performing the allergy test. I think typically they are more there to like interpret the results, or if it's been prolonged and you actually have like an issue with your GI. For example, if you're experiencing more like your IBS symptoms where there's not always a clear trigger food, the GI doctor would be the one that's in charge of really managing that care.
So they kind of check your track and make sure everything's flowing properly and you're good to go there. Okay, I gotcha.
Yeah, typically it's the skin prick test where they're going to put like just a tiny bit of that substance, or food, whatever it may be, like right under your skin. And they're going to look for some type of rash or a bump or a reaction. And those can be pretty sensitive. So sometimes they will follow up with a blood test just to confirm, because you're going to see the skin test is going to be more sensitive than the blood test.
Okay. Gotcha. Interesting. So skin test and then blood test. And then if it's really bad for your GI tract, then we're gonna talk to a specialist to check that out. Okay, interesting.
Do you think
I would not recommend biting on the companies that are asking you to send like the hair follicle samples, because I'm just gonna be really honest. There's really nothing in your hair that is telling you what is in your gut. It's just not happening. So
okay, interesting. Well, because
I hope that's not the test you bought.
Yeah, no, that's not the test that I got. Well, because I've seen two. One is the blood test, and I guess they have a physician that like checks your blood test results. So you do like five you give like 5 pricks, and then they give you the results from there. So that's the one I got.
Okay.
I've also seen one where they ask you to send a sample of your poop. And I don't know how I feel about packaging up my own shit and putting it in a box.
I'm
I
so
was
down.
more worried about the receiver of that.
I'm like, who wants to get this shit? Anyways,
You gotta be passionate about your job. I'll tell you that.
You really do.
Love shit. Just love it. They have gloves on and a big smile. We got another shipment, boys.
Hard pass. Hard pass.
Yeah, to be honest, I don't have any doctors that I currently work with that go with that test.
Okay.
Not to say there's not some truth to it, but it's not one that I think is commonly used just in like mainstream practices.
Well, because that one's more like Eastern medicine, correct? If I'm speaking correctly, because that's more about like checking your bacteria in your poop to see if you have any buildup or any remains of that bacteria that was in your body that is now in your feces. Is a better proper word than shit.
Politically correct. Yeah, I mean, you can, believe me, tell a lot from a sample, but again, is bacteria identifying an allergy? Maybe, maybe not. You might find some of those like commonalities for indigestion or again, like bacterial overgrowth, absolutely. But I think there's still some research to be done on just how much you can identify about food allergies or intolerances.
Gotcha. Yeah, it sounds like that's a very it's very new place where people are starting to put awareness on like foods to be like, oh, my body doesn't agree with this, or okay, I'm getting allergies from this. Before it was just like, okay, eat to survive and you'll be okay. And now it's more important of like, okay, how am I feeling after this? Is everything okay? Is my body functioning properly?
Yeah. And I feel like I always want to help my clients get those answers, because if it turns out that they are not intolerant or not allergic to something, I want them to be able to introduce that food back into their diet. Because some people will kind of get the ball rolling and, they're eliminating this and they're eliminating that. And it's like, well, what the heck are you actually eating? Because
exactly.
you cut out gluten, you cut out dairy, like you cut out red meat, what are you actually surviving on right now?
Yeah. And then I think that goes back to what you're talking about, your micronutrients. Like if you start avoiding some of those foods, then like for vitamin D, like if some people cut out eggs, and if you're vegan or vegetarian, you cut out fish, and then now you have no milk. It's like, okay, now you're completely vitamin D deficient, and no wonder why you're craving salmon all the time or eggs. It's like, because your body's wanting vitamin D and it needs that micronutrient. And I guess for me, I think that's something that I want to get on point too, because I don't want to just do an elimination diet and be like, oh, well, it's gluten and it's, dairy and it's nightshade plants and it's eggs and it's fish. And it's like, man, it's like, what else is left? There's nothing.
You can go ahead and cut nightshade out, brother. I don't think you're supposed to eat that anyway.
I thought, Jared, can you look up nightshade plants and tell me what they are?
That's why we have Jared here. The way he can explain that you're not
proper definition of nightshade plants.
Well, I feel like this is something I should definitely be able to rattle off quickly, but I'm gonna be honest, it's not really part of my daily conversation. So I'm just as interested as you are in this.
See?
I talk about nightshade plants every day.
Strange life you live, Austin.
When did the obsession start? That's all I want to know.
Potatoes, tomatoes, and eggplants.
Interesting.
I think it's funny.
You're gonna follow up with this, Shawn.
Do what?
I said, how are you gonna follow up with nightshade plants?
I'm changing it completely. You know what? I'm going straight. the other way. All right. So here we go. Totally different subject. We're leaving nightshade plants back where the fuck they belong, which is outside in the trash. You should not even know. So thinking back to actually the question that I've asked every, nutritionist that I've ever interviewed and every nutritionist that I've ever talked to, I think every, and honestly, maybe we need to touch on like the difference between what's a nutritionist versus what's a dietitian. Are those synonyms, or is that something totally different?
Definitely different.
Definitely different.
So,
cool. Good to know.
Yeah. Anyone can be a nutritionist. It is not a licensed term. If you like food, you are a nutritionist. If you like to work out, you can be a nutritionist. That's my
resume immediately.
Yeah. Yes. So you should all be updating your LinkedIn's
certified
after this.
Nutritionist. Right. I'm Shawn Goodwin certified.
We're going to change out your nameplate at work, Shawn.
Absolutely.
Yes. So yeah, it's just not a protected term. And so anyone who cares about nutrition can be a nutritionist. Dietitian, on the other hand, that basically indicates that someone has gone through and earned a bachelor's in nutrition sciences. They've completed 1,200 hours of supervised practice, and then they've passed a national exam.
Oh, so that's the licensure too.
That's the licensure as well.
Okay.
And then states like Illinois, for example, you have to have an additional license to practice in Illinois. So there's a lot more hoops to jump through, but I think that's a really good thing because you get people who are passionate about it, willing to put the work in, and then have worked with a number of populations. So the advice that you're going to get is authentic, and it's definitely science-based, not opinion necessarily.
Right.
That's awesome. So it's not just like bro science and some dude in a gym being like, hey, you need to eat at least 400 grams of protein a day.
Easy. Right. I feel attacked. Sir.
But no, that's a good point.
Because the basis of Shawn's nutrition program. What are you talking about?
Yeah, that was the cornerstone of it.
I could walk you through how I used to write up some of these, and you'd probably like smack me next time you saw me.
Oh, you should do that. You should give it. What do you have? Any
notes?
Yeah. Do you have any notes available, Shawn?
You should do it side by side of your meal plan and my meal plan.
Probably could. Yeah. But anyway, so now that we've made my little ADD trip, we'll circle back here. So every dietitian, sorry for the disrespect, that I have talked to, every time I bring up the supplement question, I'm obviously biased. I'm really into biochemistry. I'm really into supplements, and I'm into biochemistry because of supplements. One day I'd love to own my own company, and I really think there's a lot of really cool stuff out there that you can do within the law. Not even getting into exogenous hormones and stuff. So every time I talk to someone new about this, I always say, how do you feel about supplements? And every single one tells me, well, I'm food first, but I like supplements. So now that it's not an interview, and now that nothing's on the line or anything else, and we're just, bullshitting on this podcast, is it actually realistic to be food first? Like, let's talk about like Joe Schmo. Sure. I'll give you that all day long. But if we're talking about like a little old lady who eats like 2 gummy bears a day, or let's go with Big Ramey, who just won the Olympia at 296 pounds and 0% body fat. Like, is that dude going to get everything from food?
No, they're not. So I love that you ask that, because we are trained from day one of nutrition school that you need to take a food first approach. And don't get me wrong, I very much believe that, but I think people need to learn how to use supplements to their advantage. And we need to get out of the mindset that it's one or the other. It's called a supplement. You are supposed to have it in addition to a really good diet.
They're supplementary.
So I think, groundbreaking.
Whoa, no way.
Mind blown. But yeah, I think if you can encourage someone to prioritize their actual diet first, but then show them how to use supplements to their advantage. If you're eating really great and you're interested in using caffeine for performance, you should do that, and also where in your diet are you going to get caffeine? You can drink coffee and that's fine. Is that going to be the amount that's actually going to show an improvement in your running time or, help delay fatigue? So I think they really ought to be preached side by side, and you just need to learn how to use each one effectively.
That's a good point. Do you have any tips or any go-to supplements that you would recommend for most people?
Yeah. I think the biggest one that I usually end up recommending is actually just tart cherry juice. So we know tart cherry juice helps reduce inflammation. It helps reduce DOMS, so that delayed onset muscle soreness. And so when you've got
Also
someone
taking
that's
notes.
repeatedly training, yes, get your pens out. When you have someone that's training at a really heavy load, that can help decrease inflammation and ultimately just improve their overall recovery time, improve their sleep cycle, and hopefully lead to a little bit better training the next day. So I push that pretty heavily on my athletes.
Tart cherry juice. Is that?
Yes.
Wow. Have never heard of that.
Really?
My whole entire life. No, never.
That's very crazy. High in nitrates.
No, I believe it makes sense, but it's just like I've never heard somebody
like resisting going in down a rabbit hole.
Oh, go ahead. Feel free, Shawn.
I'm sure you are. Actually, Shawn, tell me about your experience with tart cherry juice. Have you tried it? Do you like it? You full crap?
I mean, I like the flavor of cherry.
Okay.
I'm gonna be honest with you. I mixed one of them with a Monster one time, and I drank that, and that was pretty tasty. Some of the syrup that we have at work was pretty good. But no, tart cherry juice. I mean, again, like what are we talking about here? We're talking about like a Division I athlete who did a whole day, right? That means you got morning workouts, you got afternoon weights, maybe you got another conditioning session, it's a full day, you had classes, everything else. I mean, yeah, adding a little bit of nitrates into your diet, as long as your diet is not already like super rich in nitrates, like maybe you're a vegetarian or something, then you won't have as much of an effect. But like if you're a typical, I mean, what are they, 18 to 21, 22, like they're not going to be basically proficient in nitrates. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a good idea. I mean, again, it's like there are extremes, right? For the everyday person, sure. I mean, if you go out, you're a weekend warrior, knock one out, cool. If you're a Division I athlete, awesome, it might help. If you're Mr. Olympia competitor and you're taking 20 IUs of growth hormone a day, probably don't need it.
Don't think tart cherry is going to stand a chance on that.
Yeah. So I mean, there's levels to everything,
Yeah. No, good point. Very good point. But I mean, another supplement that I use a lot and that I think, again, a lot of people benefit from is actually creatine. So probably both pretty familiar with that one. And
Queen Mother.
I know. Some people are like, oh no, creatine, you don't need it. But also there are so many benefits, like proven and proposed. And I think a lot of, especially like power athletes, would really benefit from taking it.
So where did creatine get the bad rap? Because all this time
moms.
Is that it really? Because like I hear that all the time, like creatine's bad for you, but then I see all these studies and all these benefits for it. It's like, yeah, I mean, where did it get?
Correct me if I'm wrong, Bailey. Isn't it like one of the most studied and most like proven things?
It is. It's actually like the most well-studied supplement.
The most, okay.
And pretty much any of the original like negative side effects that maybe they thought in the beginning, like things like cramping, those have pretty much been disproven at that point. I mean, if anything, creatine helps you retain water weight. And so you should, in theory, have less cramping when taking creatine because you are, in theory, better hydrated. So I don't know. I think it just kind of got a bad rep because of like people were upset about like the false weight gain that you get from that water retention. So they were saying it was cheating and it wasn't fair. And it was like, you weren't really getting any bigger. You were just holding on to water. And so, I mean, people like to be critical of those kind of things.
Oh, for sure. And it's probably like, I guess to Shawn's point too, like all these high school students taking supplements, and
I think that was everyone's first supplement, right?
I mean, yeah, I mean, it was mine. Besides like caffeine, that was my first supplement. But then it kind of branched out to like, multivitamins and fish oil and a variety of other supplements that I found beneficial as well. So it's very interesting. I'm glad you brought that up.
Why do you think it's so hard to like explain that like a fish oil, a creatine, a multivitamin is like super beneficial and useful for you, and then the sexier thing, the cool pre-workout in the tub and everything, like that's an easy sell, everybody wants to buy those? Why do you think that is?
Because we're really good at marketing in this country.
Is that what it is?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
That's not sexy.
Right. Like they don't have to show you it works. They just have to get you to believe that it works. Right. And that's what a lot of these supplements do. Like if the label looks pretty and there's a super ripped guy holding it and you want to look like that guy, people are sold. And that makes more of an impact in a statement than handing over like a scientific study that says, look how well this worked.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, that's so true.
So it's an attention grabbing thing, in my opinion. And you also are marketing to a group of highly motivated people that want a quick turnaround. And so if you pair those two things together, you've got somebody purchasing that supplement.
Yeah. Well, that's a good point too. Cause like when you take a pre-workout, you feel it. So you know it's working. Where like a fish oil, you just like, I hope my eyes stay healthy and I hope my body stays healthy.
Mhm.
And,
Your elbow doesn't hurt that bad.
Yeah, exactly. Where it's kind of like that proactive reactive thing, you know, like you're being proactive, but you don't see the benefits because the bad thing's never going to happen or less likely to happen now.
Right.
Where if you were to take the pre-workout, you get that quote unquote benefit, especially if it has a lot of beta alanine in it. You get all those tingles, you're going to feel that instantly. And that's something that people talk about all the time. It's just the tingling feeling they get.
Right.
It's so funny you said that because me and John were talking about that this very morning in the gym.
Oh, really?
Because I put him on that Total War from Redcon, and there's just so much beta alanine in that. Like it like hurts, like your face like itches, like, but you love it, right? Like for whatever reason.
Oh, and that's healthy too, to help like remove the acid and the buildup in your muscles, right? If you're trying to do more, I guess like working out for longer for your more like the resistance training.
I mean, essentially, and I mean, I'm sure Shawn can talk about this a lot more than I could, but when you do get that buildup of lactic acid, or basically your muscles becoming more saturated with those hydrogen ions, like that's going to contribute to muscle fatigue. And so if you can clear more of that, essentially the theory is that you can go a little bit longer, pump out 1 or 2 more sets, etc.
Okay, gotcha. Wow.
But again, I'm sure Shawn can really go into depth with that. That is definitely more his area of expertise.
We don't have to, right?
Oh, let's hear
But
it,
I
Shawn.
bet you want to.
Yeah,
Here's your, here's your gateway. Do it.
I think with increasing the amount of reps you can do, right? Like it's lactic acid builds up, you get that burn, you get that like, oh man, it's starting to cramp a little bit. But like for me, it's always been twofold, right? Like you have lactic acid, you have blood flow, and then you have, I guess it's threefold. Then I'm over here saying twofold, right? Like what? So, and then it's also like you think about like how the recruitment of motor neurons, right? So like our bodies are lazy and they want to use the smallest motor neurons to do the smallest tasks, right? With only recruiting those bigger motor neurons as we get to bigger and harder tasks. So like inducing hypertrophy and inducing hyperpnia are different things. And being able to go all the way to hyperpnia and growing actually new muscle fiber strands rather than just tearing down muscle fibers. Again, it's been a while since I've done this research, so don't kill me if I'm wrong, but it kind of takes an induction of all three. And so it's like, for me, like, yeah, you can take caffeine, you can take beta alanine, you can take citrulline, and so you feel like you're going to pass out. You can mix it with Norvaline, you can do all kinds of stuff. But like, if you don't have a good balance of everything, you're not going to get there anyway. I mean, you can take the coolest, sexiest pre-workout product, but like, it's got to be built kind of the right way, which is why I think dare I say, I'm a connoisseur of these these pre-workouts, because I don't know, I'm so picky.
Oh, I'm sure. and like I've had one of your pre-workouts before, and it's definitely feels a little bit more balanced rather than one of those where you're like, oh my God, is this legal? Like, how did I even take this? And then like one of the pre-workouts craze turned out that people were failing drug tests on it, which is like crazy because, it doesn't have to be super regulated. But maybe we can jump out of this supplement rabbit hole and talk about like what people can do to like be healthy, and maybe some quick tips and tricks that people might not think about in improving their diet and start to have some radical change just from changing a few things. So if you have any tips, feel free to share those.
Yeah, absolutely. Going back to that whole food first approach, I think a lot of people are walking around and really don't have a ton of awareness of what they are actually eating day to day. So they might have this notion like, yeah, new year, new me, I'm going to eat better. But do you actually know what you're currently eating? And
Right.
if you do, what about it do you need to change? And so if someone is actually serious about wanting to change their nutrition, I think they need to be diligent. And it sounds boring, but like write out a food journal, write out everything you eat for a week. Get an objective look of what you're putting in your body from day to day. And that's going to help you identify what your target area is. You know, in your mind, you may think it's one thing, and then you're going to look at that list and you'll be like, oh, wow, I actually haven't had a fruit in like 4 days.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Probably address that. Or
Yeah.
hey, I'm drinking 1 water bottle and I need more like 4. So
Oh, that's a good point. And like, I guess like MyFitnessPal would probably be a good tool to use just to get like a baseline to understand that.
yeah, I mean, I personally use it. I use it with my athletes, and I think it's just an easy, like user-friendly platform to do that on. And there's a million different variations of that app, but that's the one I'm most familiar with. So I will typically instruct people like just try it for a week. It's totally free, and just create a record where you can go back and you can look and you can get some objective data on yourself.
Yeah.
And if you feel so enticed, go take that to a professional and show them and ask them for some feedback too. Because they might help you identify a few things that maybe you didn't pick up on yourself.
That's true. And I think it's the hardest part is like being honest with yourself. Because I guess like I've even recommended that with people that haven't started to look at their diet at all. And then they'll start their diet when they start tracking. It's like, no, you should do it now. Like while you're eating a whole pizza and be honest with yourself. Because cutting from like, 4,000 or 5,000 calories a day is much easier than you just completely not eating any food at all. And then trying to say like, hey, now we got to cut from here or figure out a better diet from here. It's like, just be honest with yourself. And not a lot of people are. There's a lot of shame that's built up around their diet. And I'm sure you probably see that with a lot of your athletes where they aren't completely honest with you. They probably give you the pretty picture or the perfect day that they had in the last month. And they're not being honest about like what they're drinking or alcohol consumption or, fast food that they're eating or eating that whole pizza on a Saturday night. And it's so important. And
I think a lot of time too, it's like, do you think, Bailey, what do you think? Do you think most people actually know what they're eating? Like, I mean, like in terms of calories, like you might know like, I had this and I kind of ate bad here and I kind of ate bad there, but I'm probably okay. But like, I don't know. Again, I guess speaking anecdotally, like my order on DoorDash from McDonald's, right? Like I finally looked at the calories of that bad boy. I was like,
oh, no.
like, bro, I'm eating that like once a week. Like what?
The best reaction.
Man,
I mean, people definitely people know if it's like, all right, this is in line with my goals or this is not in line with my goals. I think if they already identify it's not in line with their goals, they don't necessarily want to dig any deeper. Like they already know, so they're just gonna look the other way.
Do you think it like it's more powerful to actually know? Because then it's like because for me, I was like, okay, McDonald's is bad. Sure, we all know that. Like I'm dieting, right? Like I've been trying to diet. Lost a little bit of weight, but it's I'm still fat as hell, so it's like whatever. But like whenever I actually looked at the actual total calorie count, I was like, I am never eating this again. Like just like that fast, done. Like
so it changed your mind.
Like it went from being like okay, like this is acceptable because it's a cheat meal and I'm only gonna do it once a week to like, okay, I can do a totally different cheat meal that's going to be better than the 4,000 calories that I'm eating in this one sitting,
Oh, yeah.
So you think like, I guess, do you think like the total immersion and the total education of what you're putting in your body is more powerful, or should it just be like eat this, not that? Can it be simpler?
No, I mean, I like what you said in the beginning about like, I think people should know. I mean, knowledge is power. And so, and that way, if it's something like, let's use your McDonald's example for a minute, but like, if it is something that you really want to have one day, if you know what is in it, what it's going to cost you, so to speak, I mean, you can still plan for that accordingly. It's not that you can never have that food. It's just now, if that's going to be your lunch, I mean, dinner probably needs to look different. Or maybe like your food the day before. What's that?
Yeah, like a glass of water.
Yeah. No, just kidding. But maybe more greens, maybe focusing on the lean protein and the vegetable piece. But no, I mean, I think people should know, and I'm never one to condone obsessing over calories. That doesn't get people very far. But again, I think having a general awareness of it, like it allows you to plan and it allows you to be successful. Because if we're constantly looking the other way, we're going to keep avoiding the problems that got us here in the first place.
Oh, for sure. That's a good point. Well, I guess I have a question about fasting. What's your opinion on like any intermittent fasting or fasting in general?
This is such an exciting topic.
Ooh.
We've actually been looking into this one a lot at work lately.
Oh, exciting.
Yes. I actually did like my senior thesis on this. So
okay,
this is a topic I like.
You.
But yeah, fasting, depending on like actually I'm gonna start off with a question. What type of fasting are you interested in, or what have you like heard the most about?
I'd probably say like the fasting where you just like don't eat until noon.
Okay.
Yeah, that's typically what I've heard of more. But then I've also heard of things that's like don't eat for the day, or rather than eating a bad meal, just don't eat all day. And it's like, okay, where's the line with fasting?
So I'd love for you to like maybe outline the different types for us. Because like if you think about like, you know, what Austin just said, like, well, don't eat till noon. It's like, okay, well, that to me is just skipping breakfast. And like, don't they say breakfast is the most important meal of the day? So like, what in the hell am I supposed to do?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, way too much contradiction there. I mean, there are several methods, like, and usually it's split up by hours. So you can have like the 12 and 12, which really isn't like fasting because most of us are doing something close to that anyways. The more effective method is really the 16-8. So you have 16 hours of fasting throughout your day and evening, and then you have 8 hours of like feeding. And this is usually the method that has the most research around it and also has the most promising results, in my opinion.
Okay.
And basically what that would look like is you're choosing a block during your day, an 8-hour block, and that is when you fit your meals in. So you're not really calorie restricted in any ways. It's just if you are going to eat, which you should, it needs to be within that 8 hours. And that's basically the only rule you have. And so, and some of the more interesting research that's come out recently is that if you can specifically tailor that 8-hour block to the morning period, it's more in line with your circadian rhythms, better in line with your metabolism. So you're going to see greater weight loss if those 8 hours are focused in the morning from say like 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., which is hard for a lot of people. But that's how you'll see the best results.
Especially if we work like a corporate job where you're like 9 to 5 and it's like you want to have a dinner afterwards and relax. But that's, yeah, because I guess like what I had been doing is like noon to 8. And then I wouldn't eat anything after that. So that's very interesting. I'll have to try that out and see how that works.
Yeah. I mean, it's not to say that it wouldn't be successful the other way, because I mean, at the end of the day, you're typically seeing the weight loss because you're consuming less calories. There isn't necessarily anything overly magical about fasting. It's that you're probably eating less in that 8 hours than you would have during the 12 hours of a normal day.
Okay.
So keep that in mind, but they are coming out with some interesting and new research on how does your circadian rhythm play into this and how does your metabolism play into this. So I'll have to keep you posted when I find a little bit more on that.
That's very interesting, especially circadian rhythm too. Just I'm sure that helps you to wake up and to not only get in a rhythm for your muscles and like doing like some sort of exercise in the morning or putting water in your body in the morning, but then also eating in the morning to kickstart that.
Yeah.
What was I going to say? I guess like for blocks of time, would you recommend, because I've heard like when we were weightlifting in college, Shawn and I, it was always like constantly eat. Or is it better to eat in blocks? Like, okay, I'm going to eat now and then eat like 3 hours from now. Like if I was going to do the fasting, or if I was just going to eat normally, like I might eat 9 a.m., noon, and then 6 o'clock. What would be, I guess, like, is there a better way to do things? Because then I hear like when you're bodybuilding, it's like eat all the time. So that way your metabolism is higher. Yeah. But I guess I'm trying to figure out like what's the best way to go about that.
Sure. It's so dependent on your goals. Like when someone is wanting to gain weight, they really should never go more than 2 to 3 hours without eating. And that's basically because we want to support muscle growth. We want to make sure they have a small caloric surplus. So, if they're missing those windows of feeding, they're probably not going to achieve those 2 goals. So
okay.
On the other hand, if someone's trying to lose weight and they're eating that frequently, they're likely going to go over that calorie recommendation. And that could kind of sabotage their end goal. So.
Okay. Gotcha. All right. That's very insightful. Thank you.
What do you think about fasting and food intake being limited when it comes to like regulation of like say leptin and ghrelin, and in terms of feeding increasing your metabolism? So if you're trying to lose weight, maybe you should eat smaller amounts more frequently as opposed to a larger amount in one time, and then your metabolism will stay sort of elevated because it's trying to burn through more food more frequently. Because that's just, maybe that's old school, but like that's was my bread and butter, man. like every diet I've ever designed has been eat every 2 hours, whether you're dieting or bulking,
Yeah. No, and you bring up a good point too about like hunger hormones. When someone's being overly restrictive, you get hungry, like that production of your hunger hormone, it's elevated. And I have always read and always been taught that like at some point, like our self-control basically breaks. Like that hormone is not going away. We're all of a sudden not becoming hungry. And that's where you see people start to yo-yo diet because they have an increase then in their hunger hormone. They've been so restrictive that they get that spike. And so where you were saying like your smaller and more frequent meals, you're still feeding your body, you're keeping your hunger and fullness hormones in check, and you're not letting that ghrelin just like run rampant in your body.
Oh, true. Yeah, I remember somebody, I forget who it was. I think it was one of Trey's buddies. He was going on like a pretty restrictive diet and had a lot of success, lost like 20 pounds in a pretty short time. But then like as soon as he like snapped back into everything, he gained like 50 pounds.
Yeah.
And he was worse off than where he started. And he had a problem like going backwards now just because he started eating all the time. And it's really,
you can downregulate your metabolism pretty severely depending on how restrictive you get. And if you put yourself in that constant starvation mode, the moment your body gets more food, it's like, great, haven't seen this in a while. We're going to hold on to all of it.
I'm saving it. Oh, that's so true. Cause I gained a shit ton of weight. Cause I did like a bodybuilding competition in like the last
12 pounds. Like, let's calm down. Shit.
Yeah. I gained like 12 pounds. Well, it was like 20. It was 20 pounds in 24 hours.
Yeah.
But I ate like Steak and Shake, Outback, whole jar of peanut butter. And like, I could literally eat whatever I wanted and I just didn't get full. And it was ridiculous. Like my mind just didn't shut off. It was just like, keep consuming. We need more. And it was unreal to be in that like state of mind too.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Gosh, we go hold down like the whole rabbit hole, because then you get into like even set point theory for weight. So like, even if you're able to make those small changes in the short term, is there a set weight that your body really naturally wants to be at and will constantly rebound back to? There's a lot of theories out there.
Well, and it's so interesting too, because like a lot of people don't even bring in metabolism. They're like, okay, how much I work out and how much I eat. And they don't realize, because it was Lane Norton? Who was he talked about like actually to lose weight, eating more food. So that way your body is used to having a higher calorie count. And then like, once you get to a point, start cutting from there. So that way it's like you kind of like build. So that way it's easier to cut from. And I guess he had a lot of success with physique bodybuilders and cutting weight that way. Because he would typically find that a lot of the people that were already in bodybuilding had a very messed up metabolism because they put themselves through starvation. And then they would have a hard time being able to cut from there because there wasn't much to cut from because their body was trying to hold on to whatever they could.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. I mean, nutrition and supplements and micronutrition and all this kind of stuff is definitely, I feel like getting a lot more attention too. So I'm sure it's exciting for you to be in this area. But I guess like, what's your biggest success story that you've had with somebody?
Biggest success story. Ironically enough, it was one of my wrestlers.
Really?
Yes. And for those of you who I guess are familiar with wrestling, like it's fair to say nutrition and wrestling don't always get along. I mean, we have a lot to fight over if we really wanted to. And I guess that's where I feel pretty blessed in my position now, because we have a good relationship with our wrestling team and we're able to work pretty much right from the get-go when guys come in. But anywho, we had a guy last year and he's been wrestling 125, and like 125 is a hard weight class for men. Men are not supposed to be 125 pounds most of the time.
It's crazy too, because that class is super competitive.
Really?
Always.
Yeah.
That's so wild. I couldn't even imagine being 125 pounds.
Bro, I was 125 pounds in third grade. That's not a joke. That's facts,
I think I was 125 pounds up until the 7th or 8th grade. So I definitely I was a few years behind you, Shawn.
I was 6 foot tall, 225 in 6th grade.
So what?
Dang. Hit your growth spurt early.
Yeah.
Wow.
Beast.
So anyways, wrestler.
Anyways, so we started working together. He had actually transferred in, and I mean, he was just having trouble getting to a weight that was like a comfortable walking around weight. Because normally in season, wrestlers should really be anywhere from 2 to 3% above their weight class. So for 125, walking around, he really should be right around 130, and then only have about 5 pounds to cut down the week leading up to competition. And that way puts less stress on their bodies. But anywho, in the beginning, just having a really hard time maintaining that weight, because he would have more comfortably walked around at like 140, right? But it was very cool because he came in and just said, like, I want to do something different. My body feels terrible. Help. Please help me get to where I want to be. And so we ended up doing his bod assessment. We wrote a couple of meal plans. Like, don't get me wrong, there was some trial and error in there. But we went and we worked on his meal plan. And then he's currently ranked 4th in the country right now. So wow. It's been exciting to see the transformation, because he had the technical skill, but he couldn't get the weight management piece down. And so by working together for a couple of months, he was able to do that. And I mean, he's just sitting in a really good position now, and they've got their first match on Sunday, and I will be there rooting him on. So
that's awesome.
That's awesome.
It is. And he's just been such a good example too, because he's an upperclassman on his team now. And, we get some of the younger guys in who they come in with maybe different expectations or bad habits from high school. And like, he's able to direct them, like, listen, we're not doing that whole cut 15-pound thing a week. Like, we're not doing that shit. There's a better way. This is how I want you to do it. I'm willing to help you. So like the leadership he now exhibits with nutrition is so cool. I mean, it's transformative for the team. So it's been fun to watch.
That's huge. And I'm sure it helps a lot when they're workable too. And it's not like you're trying to fight for, hey, take in this data, or hey, nutrition's important, rather than the old boys club style where it's like run as hard as you possibly can until you pass out. And then that's when we know we've done the job right, and we've done practice right. And it's like there's definitely better ways to do this, and there's balance that we can have in life, and still enjoy it and still push ourselves. I guess like maybe some last minute questions.
See, I've only got really one more, so I mean,
okay.
I want to respect your time, Bailey. I really do appreciate you coming on here. So,
of course, appreciate the invite.
I was gonna ask. My question is, what challenge would you put Shawn and I on? Like, if we had to do a 30-day challenge or like a 60-day challenge, what would it be?
Start with me. I know where you live.
Well, we started off this whole conversation with dry January.
That's fair.
I would just like to maybe throw that out there as a possible suggestion. But no, aside from that, challenge wise, I'm a big fan of giving people like fruit and vegetable challenges. And it sounds boring, right? Like that sounds super lame. But if you are somebody who is athletically minded, trying to stay active, trying to stay fit, like most of those people need 8 to 10 servings of vegetables a day, or fruits and vegetables a day. So 4 and 4, 5 and 5. Okay, I'm a dietitian and I don't do that most of the time. Like that is really hard. So I challenge people to improve that area of their diet. And it's basically, they're going to get more fiber, more water, more micronutrients. And those are things that, again, just in the American diet, we tend to lack, especially like middle of Indiana in the winter. Like we don't have beautiful, fresh, like watermelon or mangoes. Like we don't have great produce. So making an extra effort to include some of that this year is a big thing.
And how much is a serving too? Like what is that, like a handful, or what's an easy way to measure that?
So if it's like a whole piece of fruit, so like an average, like a medium-sized banana, medium-sized apple, if it's like a cup of chopped fruit or vegetable, that would be considered serving. So like a cup of strawberries, a cup of carrot sticks, etc. If it's fruit juice or vegetable juice, it's just 4 ounces. And then if it is like a dried fruit, it's about 1/4 of a cup. So it kind of depends on like the type of fruit or vegetable it is, but that's
Okay.
the gist of it. Yeah.
Worth checking out.
Mm-hmm.
So that's our challenge. Get our daily amount of fruits and vegetables for January.
You think you can do it?
A really good starting point is 1 fruit and 1 vegetable at each meal. And you'll find that some are easier than others, but like most of us aren't pulling out vegetables for breakfast. But if you can find a way to do that,
Oh, that's true.
Does salsa count as a vegetable?
The salsa. Shawn, that is a nightshade plant. I hope you know that.
Might as well be nightshade.
Salsa is a nightshade plant. You know where that belongs? In the trash, like you said.
In the garbage, yeah. With clear liquor.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
Oh, that's too funny.
So I guess my last question for you here, Bailey. It's kind of two-parted. Earlier, Austin brought up a guy named Lane Norton. I don't know if you know Dr. Lane Norton. He's pretty big in the fitness and powerlifting and fitness industry. One of the people that I learned the most from was a guy named Ben Pakulski, and by extension Charles Poliquin. Whenever I was coming up trying to figure out how muscles worked, and that led me into biomechanics, and that led me into physiology, and that led me into biochemistry, and that led me into advanced training tactics, and functional fitness versus non-functional fitness and all that stuff. And I say all that to say, like, you're someone with a master's degree, formal education, much like myself, considering we have the same master's degree. I guess, who are some of the people that you look to in the field as sort of like your inspiration, or maybe some people that you learned a lot from? And then as a second part, what's a good starting point? Like if I'm like, I really want to get my shit together. I really want to figure out how I can learn about nutrition and everything else. Like what's a good starting point, and what are the people I should be learning from, as opposed to, should I go on Testosterone Nation and do what they want, which is 1 pound of protein or 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight type?
No, that's a great question. That's the beauty of sports nutrition, is that we're a small world. Everyone kind of knows everybody. And so when you do break into that career path, it becomes so important just to have a really strong network. And I know, especially when I was just starting out, one of my mentors, her name is Lindsay Langford. She works at St Vincent Sports Performance up in Indianapolis. And she's been a sports dietitian there for a number of years. And then she also has the contract for the Pacers. She works with Butler University basketball. They worked with IndyCar for a while there. And she is just so knowledgeable. She's been wonderful. And so she is a good person. If you are interested in talking directly to someone in this field, she's a phenomenal resource and a phenomenal contact. And St. Vincent also does some education pieces too. Like I know they have social media accounts. They cater to the general public. So if you're a high school athlete, you can make an appointment with Lindsay. If you're a professional or an Olympian, you can make an appointment with Lindsay. So there's somebody like more local to Indiana that I would definitely recommend. Other important influential people, the other one would be, when I was, again, as a student, Katie Knappenberger up at Northwestern University. She's another person who's pretty prominent in our field. She sits on the board of CPSDA. She's actually formerly an athletic trainer who became a sports dietitian. And so she's written a couple of papers herself. Her coworkers and colleagues at Northwestern have done some great research on like fish oil and concussions. And, they're just a really, really prominent program that, again, I would kind of encourage people to maybe go towards and investigate a little bit more.
Cool. Awesome.
Yeah. Other resources though, I would also say, so CPSDA stands for Collegiate Professional Sports Dietetics. They've got a really great website that anyone can visit, and they've got a ton of resources. So they've got handouts, got a research library, got all the contact information for basically every sports dietitian in the Big Ten and other conferences. So again, for maybe the younger audience that wants to explore the research part of it, that would be another great one.
That's awesome too. Because I know whenever I was coming up in everything, I was like, I wouldn't have dared to reach out to Lane Norton or Jordan Peters or Dante Trudell. I was like, I'm going to read absolutely everything I can, and then maybe I'll ask a question. So
Yes.
that's awesome to have kind of both bookends of the
Yeah.
spectrum.
Absolutely. Yeah. Got to build the network. I mean, I swear, if I learned one thing, have good people in your corner.
Oh, for sure.
And when you get there, turn around and help the next person up. So,
Yep.
That's awesome advice. Yeah. Well, Austin, I don't know if you got anything else. I certainly don't. Bailey, you have been wonderful. I appreciate you coming on. We really look forward to part 2 with the big guy.
oh yeah,
I did.
can't wait.
Beyonce. If for everyone listening, Bailey is, what are you, 5'2", 5'4"?
Definitely 5'3".
Yeah, okay.
5'3".
5'3", right in the middle there.
Right in the middle of that.
If my hair is a little frizzy.
Yeah, okay. So I'll give you 5'2.5" on a good day. Her fiance is what, 6'8"? 6'6"?
Oh, wow.
He's gigantic. Makes me look like an infant.
Yes.
So
Yes, former O lineman, Michigan State.
Oh, wow.
We are an unlikely couple, height wise, but it's great.
I got the
Balance.
same 14-inch height difference with my wife. So
It's wonderful. You know what? If I don't like what he's saying, I just turn my head away and like, we're not even in the same atmosphere at that point. So
Can't even hear him. Oh, it's perfect.
you can hear him.
So yeah, really
great talk.
Both Bailey and Chase back on part 2, where we kind of explore more of the romantic side of wellness and the differences, especially considering Chase lives in Chicago right now and Bailey, you're down here in Bloomington. So be cool to check out part 2. We really look forward to having you back. And once again, probably for like the 90th time today, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. It was great having you.
Of course. Thank you so much for the opportunity. It's been great and wish you guys nothing but the best.
Yeah. Thanks, Bailey.
Yep. We'll see you later.